So tell me about your journey so far in music production and DJing.
Yeah, so I started producing music in my bedroom when I was about 13, 14 years old. Didn't really think a lot of it, to be honest. It was just something I did as a little bit of fun. And then a few years down the line of actually producing music, or say 2 years, I thought, okay, I actually want to try DJing as well, because as many of the bedroom DJs slash producers, I used to watch them playing at Tomorrowland and whatnot, and that's something I aspired to do. So I kind of blagged my first nightclub gig, uh, kind of got speaking to the right person and told him that I could DJ when I couldn't. And then he was like, okay, and he called my bluff and he was like, if you want, you can do next Saturday. And I was like, wow, okay, I didn't expect that. So anyway, turned up. I was 16 at the time, so I wasn't even old enough to be in the nightclub where I was DJing in there, but I wasn't consuming alcohol, and it's kind of like a creative thing, so you can do it. Did my first DJ gig with songs that I just kind of downloaded. I'd actually taught myself how to DJ within the space of a week, because I knew I had to do this club gig. And I did it, and they said it was really good, and they said they wanted to have me back regularly, which was fantastic. So yeah, so I kept doing that for a little while at that nightclub, and I kept working on music production. I'd say music production for me was probably something I focused a lot more on than DJing. And then I was at sort of a good stage with music production. I got my first record label release in 2015. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to get a one-way flight to Magaluf because I want to go and DJ in Magaluf now. I was inspired after going there with my brother on a lad's holiday. So got a flight out there, went looking for DJ work, found absolutely nothing, because I came the middle of the season, there were already DJs sorted and they didn't know me from Adam, and I wasn't that experienced, to be completely honest. I had no connections, no networks. So again, I had to resort to blagging. So I took a job as a bartender, and then I got fired because I didn't actually know what I was doing behind the bar. I was very young at the time, didn't really know what a lot of the drinks were. So I understood. And then I was thinking, okay, I'm going to just go home. Fair enough. It happened. I tried, I failed. And then I saw another nightclub that was asking for bar staff. So I was like, okay, well, I suppose I could have another month out in Magaluf. Went into that nightclub and asked them for a job as a barman. They were like, yeah. And luckily I was a little bit better then when I started that bar job, so I actually knew what I was doing a little bit more. And then I just got talking to the boss one night and he was like, so what do you do back home? And I said, oh, well, I'm actually a DJ. I said, you know, I DJ in small little bars and clubs around Wales, because that was sort of where I was by that point. And he was like, okay, well, if you're that good, he was like, you can do the last hour tonight. And nice. I was, right. So again, I had to sort of put my money where my mouth was. Jumped on, used the other DJ's songs and just showed him that I could mix, basically. And then he sort of said, okay, well, you come back tomorrow, bring your headphones and your USBs. And yeah, from then on, I did a little bit of DJing, a little bit of bar work at this nightclub, left Magaluf at the end of the season. And when I left, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if I'm going to get anything next year. And I actually got 6 offers that year. But instead, I got offered to DJ in Bulgaria, and they were offering me a really good deal, so I took that. Did Bulgaria for a few years, then went back to Spain. And just like with any industry, I networked quite a bit, and then was able to, you know, make a good living DJing around the UK and abroad. And yeah, and that's kind of been my sort of journey. And then obviously with music production, I sort of, you know, persisted with that, and then I created an alias called Bulmer, and then I managed to get a release on Heldeep Records for my first release for that. So sorry if I waffled on a bit there.
No, it's good. It's good. So what was it like, your first ever gig, sort of half blagging it? You didn't even know fully what you were doing. You knew enough, but what was it like? Like, what emotions were you feeling?
Terrifying, to be honest. It really, really was. I remember being so scared because I was a 16-year-old kid. I'd not really gone to a lot of nightclubs. and I was going into a nightclub that was, it was known for not being super friendly, shall we say, but it was a great club as well. And my mother was worried as well. She was like, what if you do bad and like people, try to lynch you or whatever like that? Or what if I just, completely make a fool of myself? Because the town I was in was quite a small town. So word would spread fast. So I was very, very, very nervous. And then I turned up and they had these decks and I didn't even know to use them. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I was just standing there. I was like, I can't play. I was like, I don't even know how to use these decks. And then luckily I was able to connect my laptop to the mixer and mix on virtual DJ. And that was kind of a very, very lucky break for me. And that was kind of what solidified sort of me thinking, okay, I can actually do this,
Yeah, cool. So in terms of like making music, what goes through your head in the process of it? Like, do you enjoy the process, or are you thinking, I need this to be really good?
Yeah, so inspiration is very important. I think before you even start a track, the main reason I'll jump onto a project and start something new is because I've thought of a song, or I've had something in my head, or I've heard another song and I'm like, oh wait, I want to do something similar. And that will cause me to jump onto the project. Although when I'm actually on the project and I'm actually producing, I'm always thinking back to sort of my experience playing songs in a nightclub and thinking, okay, could this actually be suitable to play in a nightclub? Would DJs actually play this? And I think that's really important to try and recreate the energy of a lot of these main room songs, if that's the genre you're playing, or you're producing rather, to really put yourself in the shoes of a DJ who might be playing that song and thinking, okay, could I see this actually getting a good reaction? And if I don't believe that it will get a good reaction, I simply just will not continue the project. For me, it's all about actually the song, being able to support itself when it's played live and being something that people can listen to.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. So what does success look like when you release a track? Is it Spotify plays? Is it a good crowd reaction when you're DJing? What does it look like to you?
Yeah, so I suppose success is kind of a subjective topic, really. It's really what you perceive as success. I mean, for my release on Heldeep, it didn't get millions of views, and plays. It got a few, but it didn't get, an astronomical amount. But it got support from a lot of big DJs. So before it was even released, it got played by David Guetta, it got played by Martin Garrix, it got played by Tiesto, it got played obviously by all the Heldens. Sander Van Doorn, Lost Frequencies. A lot of big DJs were playing that song, and for me, that was success. For me, I was like, okay, well, if these guys are hearing it and actually willing to play that, it shows that the song, has some sort of quality that they might like, and it shows that I've actually done a good job in producing it. So, for me, that's what I perceive as success, and I believe that to make a track successful, it doesn't necessarily have to be a track that's in the top 10 of the charts. A successful track is a track that people listen to and they love, and you get your own little fan base from that track, and they really, you get a lot of good comments on it. And for me, that's success.
Super. Okay, and I hear this quote about obviously quality versus quantity. Someone could release a track every week, but it might not be very high quality. What's your approach to it?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think in any creative industry, there's always a sort of differential between the creative side of it and the industry as a business. And a lot of producers get caught in the latter, where they feel like they've got to pump out these tracks to continue this momentum. And that's fine, because it does work. If you keep the momentum up and, it's like the shotgun method, eventually you will hit something. However, for me, I believe in the actual craft of music production. And I'm not necessarily doing it to get famous or anything. I'm not really bothered about that. I do it because I love producing music, and I feel like the music that I produce is a reflection of myself and my abilities. So I would never release a track that I wasn't absolutely 110% on. But that's obviously quite contentious, because a lot of producers would disagree with me and say you should release a track. Even if it's never going to be perfect, just release it. But I suppose everyone's got their own way of doing things, and that's my way of doing it.
True. Okay, that makes sense. And when it comes to releasing tracks, there's a massive debate about using record labels or going independent, especially like with social media and everything. what approach do you use for that? Would you use your own social media following, or would you try and get it signed by a record label?
For me, it's a little bit different because my first release on Bulmer was my first release. I mean, it was the first song I ever released under Bulmer, so I didn't really have any following to sort of draw on. You know, I could upload it somewhere and hope for the best. A lot of managers have told me in the industry that producers who create their own record labels and build it from the ground up, releasing their own music on it, tend to be a lot more respected in the industry. And I can see why, because obviously you're creating an imprint as well as a brand, and you know, I can see that. But for me, I think genuinely the most effective way of just releasing good music and getting your name out there and getting that following is by releasing it on a good record label that has connections to DJs who can spin that track, and you know, has a very good marketing team. Because to do that on your own with, you know, maybe not a lot of money or maybe not a lot of knowledge on the industry is a very difficult thing to do.
Okay, that makes sense. And when it comes to your process of approaching record labels, what do you normally do? Do you email them, or is there any tool that you use?
So yeah, to be honest, I don't even email them anymore. I used to send hundreds of emails of my demos to labels, and I wouldn't get anywhere, as many producers do, and it was very frustrating. So what I realized that I needed to do really was actually network with people who work within the labels, build connections with people I can actually speak to and say, oh, by the way, I've made this, do you want to have a listen to it? Because that's, you know, the ratio of tracks getting signed from that method as opposed to, you know, just sending it to a record label email is like 100 to 1, you know. So I'd say if you really want to get your tracks onto good labels, networking is far more important than just sending a million emails with your track attached to it.
So even like finding a name of someone on LinkedIn who's attached to a record label, finding the A&R person?
I'd say it does massively depend on your circumstances. So for me, I was a DJ that went and played out a lot of clubs, and I got speaking to a lot of different people, which helped me a lot. However, if you're not a DJ that does that, then yeah, absolutely finding A&R's emails from LinkedIn and trying to talk to them and trying to get your track across, and definitely networking with DJs already on the label is a very good way to do it, because, you know, you're still networking, just in a slightly different way. It's not in a physical way. And, you know, I'm not at all saying that A&Rs don't check their emails and they don't listen to songs that are sent to them. It's just they get a plethora of music sent to them daily. So it's just, to get your track heard is obviously a lot more difficult doing it, you know, without any sort of connection or any sort of word of mouth that's put you in a position where you can speak to them.
True. Okay, that makes sense. And you've released, I think your first release was on Deep Blue Records, is that right?
No, my first release is on a Swedish label, a Swiss label called WUP Records. It doesn't anymore, I don't think. And then after that, I got a release on Deep Blue Records. But, you know, my release on Deep Blue Records came from a DJ that I used to DJ with in Magaluf. I knew him.
Oh, wow.
And I got talking to him. So, you know, I suppose if I had just sent, you know, it to him in an email, maybe it would have got signed. But obviously, knowing him helped more.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And what's it been like the difference for you getting a release on a small label compared to a big label like Heldeep? Is there any difference? What would you say the difference is?
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's a massive difference between getting released on a small label as opposed to a big one. So when I got my releases on like Deep Blue Records and WUP Records, you get a few plays and a few cool comments. But when I released on Heldeep, I had this literal fan base kind of, it was almost like feeling a little bit famous. I know that sounds weird, but there were people like commenting like, you know, love from China and love from all these cool countries. And then there were people like saying, who is this Bulmer guy? You know, he's just come from Norway. And then there was speculation that my brand Bulmer was an alias of Oliver Heldens, and people were saying that it was a Heldens alias. And there were people like, you know, this guy's sound this and that, like we really want to keep updated. So you just get so much more traction doing it that way. And of course, another major difference was getting it played by A-list DJs, like obviously such as Garrix and all them. on a small label, it's very unlikely that you might get in that position straight away unless your track is so good that regardless of the label, it just shoots to the top 10. But it's very difficult because the way record labels work. Sorry, just give me a second. The way record labels work is you'll send them a track. They release the track, but they do a PR campaign before it actually gets released. So they'll spend time sending it to all these people before it's released and saying, okay, what do you think of this? And then they tend to get played that way. So, yeah.
Oh, I see. And what was the process like approaching a small label compared to like Heldeep? Was it more personal? Was it more? How did it feel like speaking to label?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot more personal approaching Heldeep. I knew somebody who knew Oliver Heldens. And I spoke to her and I was like, look, is there anything you can do? And then she sort of passed it along. And then obviously Oliver just messaged me out of the blue on WhatsApp. That was pretty crazy just seeing that. So yeah, of course it was a lot more personal. It wasn't the standard thing that I'd done for so many years of just sending a track via an email. But at the same time, I feel that I don't even think the track would have got listened to had I just sent it to loads of different labels via email. It might not have got listened to as much as someone actually saying, oh, I know this guy, he's made this track. You know what I mean?
Wow, but it's literally who you know, isn't it? Literally.
Yeah, I mean, it is who you know, but at the same time, the track has to be good, and it has to be very good, because. Yeah. And that's not to say my track is extremely good, but yes, I have I had a very lucky opportunity to have my track passed on to Oliver, but at the same time, if the track sounded like garbage, you wouldn't get anywhere. Yeah, you probably listen to it and go, okay, well, that's not really for us. It just so happened that the track was in the style of what Heldeep was releasing, and he liked it, that I actually got somewhere. So I'd say it is 50% about who you know, but the other 50% is really the quality of the track, because there's no point in having all these connections if your music is just not good enough to be released. They're not going to do it. And that's just the way it is.
Makes sense. Okay. And in terms of building your own brand on social media, got all these platforms, how do you stay on top of it?
So I struggle, to be honest, to stay on top of the branding stuff. It's quite time consuming. I know a lot of music producers and DJs who do it full time can spend a lot more energy into posts on social media and whatnot. But for me, as it stands, I work full time. I work on the weekends, and I have very little time to actually put effort into, branding and stuff. So to be completely honest, my marketing skills are awful. I'm just relying on the fact that my music is good enough for people to sort of see past the fact that I can't post every single day. And it's obviously if I could, I would, but I've just not got time to spend all day on social media and making content for social media. I've just not got time.
Okay, that makes sense, because you hear about people saying, like, obviously it's hard to make music and then post on social media, like you can't do everything at once. But I suppose you can't really measure your return on investment from a social post, can you? It's hard to measure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of producers will say that marketing and branding is everything, but it's not. It's really, really not. Networking and the quality of your music is everything. You market and you brand, and if you want to get booked for good gigs, obviously you need a following. But at the same time, that's not. That's you can accomplish a very good following just from releasing a track that does really, really well. People will find the social media and they'll go, okay, even if he's not going to do posts, I'm going to tune in because I like the music he makes, or she.
Yeah.
And that is just the way it works.
Okay, that makes sense. And when it comes to, like, obviously a music career, what do you think about setting goals? Do you think goals are beneficial or damaging?
I'd say it depends on the sort of type of goals you're setting. So goals can be very productive in the sense of, like, I need to finish this track by a certain amount of time. Like I've got a goal for my next track. I need to finish it by a certain amount of time, and that's what I plan to do. But if you're setting these constant unrealistic goals, then that bleeds into setting unrealistic expectations, and then you're at a position where you're constantly feeling defeated because you might not necessarily be able to reach these goals you're setting yourself. And I'm talking about some person who's just started producing music when I want to be DJing in Tomorrowland in 2 years, you know.
Yeah.
So I'd say goals are productive when they're set properly, and they're set realistically, but you've also got to be very realistic in the goals that you set. So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Did you set yourself any goals when you first started out, and how would you say you've reached the goals that you've set yourself?
I didn't set any goals for myself, to be honest. I set expectations of where I expected to end up. But in terms of goals, not necessarily. Because the thing is life is so interchangeable, and the music industry is so interchangeable. And whereas you might be an expert at producing a certain genre, that genre might be rendered, you know, insignificant within a year, and another genre takes over. And so you can't really plan to be at a certain point, because it is purely by chance. To be completely honest. I mean, I'll be straight with you. Like when I was 16 and 17 and I was producing music, I was like, gosh, like I was thinking to myself, I was like, I'm going to be like a world famous DJ, and I'm going to be playing these huge gigs in a few years. That didn't happen, and that wasn't because I didn't want it to happen. That wasn't because I didn't want it to happen. That was because I decided that other things in my life should take more priority. And as someone who's DJ'd a lot over the years, I've realized that, you know, being a DJ and touring is actually not the lifestyle that I really want. I'd like to do it here and there, but I don't want to be a DJ that's constantly on the road and constantly touring, because for me, that's just not where I want from life, and that's not why I produce music.
Okay. On that note, do you have any regrets of the choices you've made so far with your music career?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to say I regret things, because there's things that at the time I might necessarily have thought was a bad move, but then I found out later down the line it's actually saved me from a world of other catastrophe, so we say. But I mean, you know, things I do regret is obviously not spending as much time producing as I should be. Like when I got this release on Heldeep, I had so much time off producing music, because other things just got in the way. And another thing was I was becoming far too self-critical on the music that I was making. So I produced these tracks, and I was like, okay, now I've got this release. I've got the release that I wanted. I wanted Heldeep for years, since 2015 I did that. Wow. So 5 years I wanted to get on that label. And then I was like, I finally got it. And every track I'd make, I was like, it has to be the absolute best of the best. And I was just super self-critical. And I regret that, because now I listen back to a lot of those projects that had come away from it. I was like, they're perfectly good tracks. It's just that I regret being so kind of hard on myself really at the time, and I'm putting so much pressure to make the next big thing, and then just walking away from it and having so much time out. I think that I should have really, you know, understood that I've got to this position because I've worked for it, and just tried to continue a bit of that, you know.
Yeah, that's it. And I suppose my next question is, a lot of producers have the same problem where they have a folder full of 50 or 100 tracks that are unfinished. Do you have that problem? And if so, how do you sort of combat it?
Yeah, I've got hundreds and thousands of projects which I've done and are not finished. And I think it's actually a really good thing. A lot of people might say that it's stupid, and, you know, why start a track and then just start another one. But at the same time, you've got to understand, in any sort of art and any creativity, there's always going to be a sketchbook. And that's what your folder full of your project is. It's a sketchbook. And then you find one thing that could become a masterpiece, and you paint it and you finish it. And that's what music is. So I think it's actually very productive to go through a lot of projects and different ideas, because obviously you're constantly getting inspiration. And then, you know, and then at least in a few years, if you're looking for inspiration, you've got all of these projects to come back on, which has helped me so much, of having these projects to come back on when I've been in a dry spot.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. So your sort of mentality is use the spur of the moment, any like inspiration you get, and work on something. And if you don't finish it, you can always come back in the future, sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Just, you know, maybe it's just the way I do it, but if I get something that comes into my head, I've got to put it down into a project. it's like that's a really cool idea at the time. And then you know, you might listen to it and go, no, it's not that good. Or you might listen to it and go, oh my gosh, like I can really make something good with this.
Yeah.
And you know, and you continue to do that.
Makes sense. Super. And when it comes to, obviously, before you release a track, you have to mix it and master it and make sure it sounds professional. What do you think with like Lander, for example, online mastering services, compared to using a person to master your tracks?
So I'm actually a mixing and mastering engineer. So as a side hustle,
biased. Yeah.
As a side hustle, I obviously do it as well. Now, I've used Landar before and I've used programs like that before, and you can't use AI to replace the real thing. Landar might be a cheaper alternative and a very good and complex program, which I think is really well designed, but it's never going to be as good as someone physically doing it. And even though I'm actually a mixing and mastering engineer and I get paid to mix and master my own tracks, I send my tracks to another mixing and mastering engineer, because the important thing for me is having somebody else with a lot of experience listen to your track, and their ears on it is very valuable and very important. So that's sort of why I think a person is always going to be more valuable than any AI algorithm.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, super. And in terms of the electronic music industry and the DJ and producing industry, how do you think it's going to change in the next few years? Like, can you sort of foresee a big change in the industry?
What, in the DJ industry or the music industry in general?
Music industry in general.
I'd say the music industry, you know, the music industry is always going to remain constant. There are always going to be tracks that, you know, reach the charts. I'd say the genres which are really coming through now is obviously techno and tech house. They're becoming bigger and more mainstream genres. But also on the flip side of that, you have a lot of these rap artists with very complex names that are becoming quite popular. And I think the way in which we process new releases is going to change through TikTok. Most people are getting their music from there, and the songs that are becoming popular on TikTok are actually becoming songs that are in the charts now, and so it's hard to say what specific genre will become popular, because if I knew that answer, then I'd make a lot of people very rich, including myself. But the way in which we consume music is very clear that, you know, social media is going to be the most pivotal platform in actually getting new music and actually deciding what's popular and what's not, I think.
Yeah, okay, super. And in terms of getting noticed, do you think with all this social media noise, do you think it makes it easier or harder to get noticed as a producer?
It is a very, very difficult question, because the two are completely balanced in one respect. So in one way, you've got every producer trying to shoot their shot on social media and go viral and get noticed. So it becomes a very saturated market. However, social media, despite all of that, does give a producer the opportunity to be very unknown, make a track, and it goes on the right video, the right person, it gets seen by the right people, and it absolutely blows up. So I think the two kind of balance each other out, really. But I think that you know, the takeaway from it all is that social media is here to stay, and it's a very, very important tool that producers can use now. But at the same time, I feel like social media isn't really testament to the quality of music. It's testament to the tracks that just go viral because they're on the right video and that becomes a trend. But that doesn't necessarily reflect the quality of the song, which is a bit of a shame, really. But I feel like producers now will start making their songs a bit more TikTokable, shall we call it? And a bit more, viral, kind of geared towards becoming viral.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. And a question on, obviously, your DJ career so far. What would you say are the best and worst moments? Because obviously you've had residencies all over the place, and you don't like the lifestyle of traveling and the DJ lifestyle. What is it that you don't like, and what is it you do like about it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a difficult one, because there's things that I don't like about it, which I also like. So for me, I love that the DJ industry and what I do has given me the opportunity to go to so many cool places and meet the most amazing, talented people you could ever come across. And on a personal level, it elevated me socially. You know, I was just a nerdy little kid who produced music, and then I was DJing in these super clubs abroad and being, you know, the poster boy. And any kid who's like 18 years old, 19 years old, that's just such an insane thing to see and getting all this respect. And I love that. But, you know, that's not why I do it for the attention and the glory or whatever. I think what I really love most about it is performing, just seeing the crowd react well to something that you've put a lot of creativity and energy into, and having that admiration for music that you make and something that you are so passionate about as well. Now, the things obviously I didn't like about it, there's a lot of people in the industry, in the DJ industry, who do not have good intentions, and they're very snaky. They will, you know, undercut you, or they will, you know, try to talk bad about you behind your back, and they'll try and sabotage your career. And I think going far in the industry allowed me to see a very dark side of it, and that's something I didn't like. But, you know, I suppose it's the same in many industries, really. I suppose my lowest point really was when I was doing seasons abroad, and you don't get a night off when you're doing seasons abroad. You're DJing 7 days a week. In Magaluf, in Bulgaria, I did get some nights off, but and you reach a point where you're so out of touch socially because you're DJing all night, and then you're going to these after parties, and then you're sleeping all day, and you're just so out of sync with everybody else, and you fall into a bit of a depressive state because you kind of just the only thing you do when you're awake is go into a nightclub and you're surrounded by loud music and drunk people, and for any sane normal person that's going to take a toll. And the bar staff, you know, the managers, they all have to go through it. But as a DJ, there's that added kind of element of pressure, because if you don't do a good job and the club empties, or you make a mistake, people notice, and that could mean the end of your job, because it's a very saturated market. There's a lot of people trying to do it. So the thing that put me in a bit of a low place when I was doing it was the repetitive DJing every single night, just being surrounded by loud music, drunk people, but combined with the pressure of having to perform every single night, because you know that if you slack and you slip behind, they could just find somebody else. And that's always at the back of your mind. At least it is mine as a professional.
Wow. Okay. But would you say, if someone's looking to do a season abroad in Magaluf or Bulgaria, would you say the positives outweigh the negatives in your mind? How would you say?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, the positives absolutely outweigh the negatives. I wouldn't do it if it was the other way around. I mean, you know, I would sleep most of the day, but on the days that I would get up early, I'd have the most amazing experiences. Like, I would be on jet skis with my friends. I'd be flying a plane around Mallorca. I'd be going to these cool villages and riding my moped around the island. You know, getting paid to live in such a great country is like, it's incredible. And then, you know, you're DJing and these people are going absolutely crazy for the music that you're playing, you know, and they just having the best time, and you're having the best time, and you've got all these amazing acts that come in. You know, I was DJing with Joel Corey, I was DJing with Marvin Humes, I was DJing with all of these amazing, you know, artists I used to come in and play, and that's just, you never will do something like that in your life without thinking this is incredible, unless you're very blasé. But I certainly, being a little Valleys boy who came from, you know, a very small town, it was magical.
Man, cool. And in terms of, like, obviously technical DJing versus what the crowd wants, how much would you say like the skills of a DJ, how much is it, would you say, playing the right song versus knowing how to mix from one song to another?
Yeah, so I'd say the ratio of track selection to actually mixing is about 9-1. So track selection is far more important. A good DJ knows exactly what to play and when to play it. And a good DJ can look at the crowd and know what they want. the crowd doesn't necessarily care as much
Right.
about how you mix the track as opposed to what track's coming in. But at the same time, a DJ who can play very well and mix very well and surprise the crowd with these really cool transitions is obviously really good as well. So yeah.
Okay, so if someone said, "Oh, you're a good DJ or a bad DJ," what would you think they were talking about?
Yeah, I think that they were kind of more on the side of track selection. I think that they'd, for me as a commercial DJ,
Yeah.
knowing what to play is very important, and being able to read the crowd is very important. So when somebody says you're a good DJ, for me that means, okay, I've understood what the crowd wants, and I've kept them in the club by playing what they want and being very flexible. You know, and yeah, I mean, it depends who it's coming from as well. If it was a club manager that said I was a good DJ, that's what I would think. But if it was another DJ that said I was a good DJ, I'd assume it was maybe more on the technical side and doing these wicked transitions that we all try to learn to do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it makes sense. Super. And final question, what advice would you give to anyone who wants to start out as a DJ or producer, like right now?
I'd say do it because you want to do it. I mean, this is advice that I've been giving for years. A lot of people start because they see the kind of the good side to it, and they see the glory and the touring and the women, and well, maybe the men. I don't know, whatever you're into. And the people who go into music production and DJing with that intention, they very rarely do well unless they've got the money to pay ghost producers and pay a marketing team. If you're just trying to do it as yourself, then it's you're not going to do well if that's at the back of your mind. To produce music and to become a good DJ and to actually get recognized for what you do, you've got to love what you do, and you've really got to system at it and keep trying to improve what you do. And I think if your intentions are pure and you understand that, and you produce music and you DJ because you genuinely love it, then you will succeed. But at the same time as well, one thing I'll say which is very important is to always have in the back of your head that the music industry is a business, and that music is played for people who go out on, maybe like a night out and they enjoy the music. And you've always got to have, depending on what genre you make, of course, you've always got to have in the back of your head, okay, are people actually going to listen to this, and are people going to enjoy it? Because, if you're making 170 BPM techno, you want to be a commercial DJ who's headlining, some ridiculous, well-known festival, then you've got to consider whether that's actually going to be plausible.
Yeah. Okay. So it's got to sort of be what you enjoy doing, like be self-aware that you're doing it for yourself, not for some external motivation, as well as be practical, because the music you make, if you want to do well, it has to be commercially viable, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, if you're producing in an underground market as well, and you're producing underground market, that's fine. But as long as I think the most important thing is that if you're making music for a specific audience and you know what that audience is, I think that's the important. Because if you're just making music and you don't really know, where it's going to go and who's going to really listen to it, you just lose direction, and then you don't really know where to apply yourself. So I think an understanding of, who am I actually producing this for? Who's my audience? That's something you've really got to consider when you're actually producing music.
Makes sense. Super. Well, that's it. Thanks for coming on, Dillon. Been a pleasure to speak with you. And cool. Catch you later.
Pleasure. All right, mate. Thanks.